So if there's one thing I want you to take away from this sermon this morning, if there's one point I want you to go home with, it's this, that what is normal is not necessarily what is right. That is, what is normal is not necessarily what is right. It is very easy to become confused on this point in the society in which we live, in any society, I think, because the norms of the society feel like the morals of the society. In fact, even in sociology, they often confuse the two things. We confuse the normal for what is the right thing to do. Well, what's everybody else doing? Well, what is the crowd think? What does the group think? What do my friends on Facebook think? We want to know what the norms of the society are whenever we face a challenging question, and then we shape our behavior to match the norms more often than we probably realize. Most of the guys in this room, I would assume, are wearing pants. I can't see you below the waist, but I assume that you're wearing pants. Why do I assume that? Because it's normal. Of course you're wearing pants. I mean, none of you are probably naked from the waist down. But why not? Well, because that's not normal. Nobody would do that. We assume that those things that we see everybody else doing are the things we must do. If you don't believe me, hear this story about pants. My wife is insane. You should know that. She thinks that I'm really handsome. That's part one of the insanity. Then she thinks that I should wear bright colors a lot, which is nobody should wear bright colors, sorry. No guy. I think it looks good on some guys, I just don't want to be that guy. I don't think I look that great, so I don't want to be noticed and be flashy most of the time. Plus, my personality kind of grabs enough attention as it is. So I just kind of wear plain colors most of the time. But my wife, once upon a time, early in our marriage, before I knew what a wily creature she was, convinced me to buy a pair of orange jeans. That was a vast mistake, and I won't repeat it anytime soon. But she convinced me, and the only time I wore these jeans after the first couple of times, mainly because my friends all referred to them as prison pants, the only time I wore them was when I was doing heavy manual labor, because I'm too cheap to just buy clothes just to wreck. And so why not just wreck the orange jeans that I hate anyway? And so I would wear them to work all the time. And I get the strangest looks when I get on the subway when going to my job as an irrigation professional once upon a time, because I wasn't normal. Because I wasn't fitting in. And at first, I didn't know what the big deal was. But after a while, I'm on the subway, it's Toronto, there are thousands of other guys on their way to work. And you look down the train and you realize guys are wearing beige pants, gray or black pants, and blue pants. No other colors are available to boys, apparently. Guys don't wear any, girls wear any color pants they want. Guys wear those three colors and nothing else. On that train, for week after week, I was the only guy not fitting in. And people would stare at me. I was probably a bit self-conscious. But I was pretty sure some of them were really looking at me and going, why is he wearing orange pants? Why doesn't he fit in? Because my wife is weird, and that made me weird temporarily. But that's not the point. What's the point? The point is what is normal is not necessarily what is right. We though sometimes, before we even realize it, we just fit in with the societal norms. Jesus here is instructing his followers, look at the normal with critical eyes. He's instructing his disciples to take a look at the normal with a critical set of eyes. That is not, he doesn't tell them, reject everything that's normal. He doesn't say, be weird just for the sake of being weird. You know, one of the other temptations we might have is, oh, okay, so we're not supposed to be normal, so we'll walk on our hands from now on, all the time, no matter where we go, we're all going to practice walking on our hands, and we'll just be the people that walk around on our hands instead of our feet, because that'll make sure everybody knows that we're not normal. And we'll, I don't know, eat eat spaghetti for breakfast and scrambled eggs for dinner every night, and that way everyone will know we're not normal. He doesn't say embrace the abnormal because the normal should be questioned. He says look at the normal with critical eyes. Look at the normal around you. What is the normal they see around them? They see these teachers, and here's a shock, the teachers are getting respect. The elders are being respected and noticed. You've probably never heard of such a crazy concept. Never in all of the world has such an idea. No, it's really normal. In Canadian society, you tell somebody that you work at the university, they automatically, because I do this all the time, I say, well, I work at the university. That's where I start. And they say, oh, are you a professor? They get kind of this like, ooh, I'm in the presence of somebody special. And then when you tell them, no, I'm the Baptist chaplain, they, let's go talk to somebody important. And they walk away from me. They're done with you. But there's still a reverence for teachers, for elders, for the respected authorities. They're called the respected authorities, if you need another name. The norm is that you respect them, that you look up to them. Jesus is asking us to take a critical look at that. That in the church, in the way that we run our churches, we should reconsider that. Why is he attacking this particular thing? Of all the things in society to attack, it's not the only one. We read through a long list. My wife said far too long a list last week of all of the commands of Jesus. And we looked at all the things he commanded. And if you paid attention at all, you would have noticed he critiques some other pretty normal behaviors and says maybe these aren't the right behaviors. This one in particular, he's looking at respecting your teachers. Why would that be a problem? Because he's trying to teach you a deeper spiritual truth. There's a deep and important spiritual truth at work here. There is a reversal. Here, we are supposed to embrace the abnormal just for the sake of rejecting the normal. On this one point, God opposes the proud and gives grace to the humble. God is in favor of the janitor and not near as excited about the Pope. And that doesn't add up in our society. There's no part of our society, not in the church, not in our school systems, not in our governmental systems. And if the Prime Minister walks in the door, just because it's the Prime Minister, you sort of give a little bit of respect. And people like to talk about, oh, if that person came in, I would tell them what. I bet you wouldn't. Right? When they actually walk through the door and the security guards are standing all around them, it's pretty normal to, your first reaction is to give a little deference, a little respect. Just for the sake, if nothing else, even if you don't like the person, for the sake of the position, you kind of, oh, yeah, we should be nice. We should be polite. We should offer them the best seat at the table. We should make sure that everybody knows that they're the most important person in the room. There's an automatic, it's the head table at every wedding. All of this. Why is Jesus critiquing all of it? Because he says in the church, we ought to model something a bit different. A deep spiritual truth that goes directly against the grain of everything that's normal. God likes servants. God looks to the lowly to raise them up. And the people who so happily stand at the front and say, hey, look at me. God doesn't like them near as much. And everything in our society says the opposite. Because when the people that are usually at the front, getting all the attention, usually are getting the good paycheck too. And they marry above their station, at least in looks usually. And look at famous preachers and then look at their wives. They always look a bit like catalog models. They don't exactly look like supermodels, but they're always kind of pretty, really well put together. Everything's just kind of just so. We we think that we're supposed to respect and give the best, and everything's supposed to work in the favor of those people that are up front. That's how it's supposed to be. Everybody knows that. Jesus says, no. It's not supposed to be that way in this group of people. Because we're supposed to, by example, teach the whole world that God doesn't play by those rules. Why is that so important? Here's why. Because of that. Because of the cross. The cross is how we all enter into our relationship with God. The shed blood of Christ, the communion that we're about to celebrate, is the entry point for all of us by which we begin our relationship with God. Without the cross, there is no path that we can earn God's favor or earn His respect. We get His respect, we get His favor. He smiles on us because He looks at us through the filter of His Son Jesus, sees Jesus' righteousness imputed on us, put over us like a blanket, and says, "This is my Son in whom I'm well pleased." You and you and you and you, all of you have the ability to be God's Son in whom He's well pleased because of the gift righteousness, the extra righteousness, the granted grace, favor, righteousness of Jesus that He provided on the cross that covers all of our sins, that covers all of our unworthiness. But what does it do when you accept that that's how you get to God? It's not about anything you did. Well, then the whole thing turns on its head, because all the other world religions are about what you do to please God. They are about earning God's favor. And if you're going to turn all that on its head, you need to turn the whole system on its head. I know that we have somewhere in the calendar, I never know when it is, because as a chaplain, I never get the cards. And I usually forget to send my pastor, whoever it happens to be, a card myself. That's my fault. But I never exactly know when Pastor Appreciation Sunday is, but I know there is one. Because I get just enough emails from blessings that I get a reminder email that I delete with all the rest of the blessings emails I get. I'm a bad Christian. But Pastor Appreciation Sunday is one of the emails I get. So I know it's in there. We ought to have a janitor appreciation Sunday. An admin assistant appreciation Sunday. An appreciation Sunday for the person that scrapes the ice off the sidewalks all winter long that doesn't even have a title. They just come and do it. Those ought to be the people that we spend our time lifting up in the church. It's not likely to happen anytime soon. But it ought to. Because we're sending that message through our actions that we don't play by the rules of the world. We accept people not based on their merits, not based on some achievement, not because they have some degree or some letters in front or behind their name, not because they've arrived, but because they serve. Because when they serve, they remind us that Jesus came not to be served, but to serve. And if Jesus isn't too good to serve, then how can any of us be too good to serve? And it turns the whole system on its head. It all centers around how you treat the leader. Now, I get that I'm the leader, kind of, and I'm standing up here telling you to not respect the leader. Listen to me, don't listen to me. Respect what I'm saying and don't respect me from now on. I know there's some difficulty, some paradox, some conflict in that. Some cognitive dissonance in the midst of that statement. I understand that. But I still think it's true. Jesus says, look at the Pharisees, enjoy what they have to say about pursuing a righteous relationship with your Heavenly Father. Take it very seriously. But when you look at their lives, how they like to be known as the Holy One, how they would never stoop so low as to pick up some trash on the way to church, because they might brush it against their robe, and their robes have to be spotless, because they're going to be up front. When you see all of that, reject that wholeheartedly. That's not the path to holiness. It's not about how clean your robes are. It's about how pure your heart is. It's not about how much attention you garner when you stand at the front. It's about how faithfully you clean the toilets when no one knows you're there. That turns things on its head. One last little thing about this passage. Don't hear in this passage a new set of rules. Some people read this passage and they're like, okay, so here are the titles we must reject. We can't call anyone father, and we can't call them teacher, and we can't call them rabbi, and we can't call them Lord. They come up with a list of titles you're not, and so then you can use other titles of respect, but just not those ones. Well, no, maybe we have to reject all titles of respect. Some of them we say. They debate back. But Jesus isn't trying to set up a new set of rules about which titles you're allowed to accept and which ones you must reject as a Christian leader or as a Christian in general. He's not trying to say, Gary, you can't let them call you chairperson or committee leader, but you can allow them to call you servant leader. You can accept that one, but you can't accept the other ones because that's not what it's about. It's not a list of these are the titles and these aren't the titles. I said it, and let me say it one more time. It's about critiquing what's normal and turning it on its head on this one issue. Sometimes to reject the normal is just to be weird. If you just reject the normal so that you wear orange pants on the subway, you'll just be weird. You won't somehow be holier than the people in blue and brown pants. You'll just have orange pants. And there's all kinds of norms that you could reject that aren't necessarily evil or good. They'll just make you weird. But on the things where God specifically instructs us to reject the norms, we should critique them with great care. We should examine them with great diligence to determine what is the best path, what is the best way that we as a group of people can reflect this truth, that God opposes the proud but gives grace to the humble. You know, once upon a time there was a guy that rejected the norms that were expected of him. He was expected to preach in his little Baptist church. He was the pastor of a little Baptist church of a couple hundred people, mostly all from one ethnic group, and he was expected to go and preach faithfully to them. But he didn't listen. One of his church members got kicked off a city bus. And for whatever reason, that was the last straw for him. And he led public rally after public rally after public rally, and a few years later, a few years down the road, despite everybody telling him, people from his church telling him, people from his community telling him, his own parents telling him, certainly his adversaries, those he was fighting against for justice, telling him, shut up, go back to your Baptist church, go back to your little pulpit and stay there. They put him in prison because he wouldn't stay there. They mocked him because he wouldn't stay there. They threatened him because he wouldn't stay there. But still, just a few years later, he found himself on the public square in Washington with literally hundreds of thousands of people gathered, and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands more watching on television as he gave one of the most famous sermons ever given. You probably know it. And he said, I dream of a day when my children will be judged by the content of the character, not the color of their skin. I have a dream. He said, one day they will join together with children of all colors and all creeds and all tongues and all nations. They will sing the words of that Negro spiritual like it's never been sung before. Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, free at last. There are times when you'll question the norms and you'll realize what's normal is not necessarily what is right. And it will take great courage to stand up and say, no, I'm going to do something different. Not for the sake of just being weird, not just to try to say I'm different, but to defend the truth of God. And if you have that courage, one of you, or 10 of you, or all of you, if you take one of those stands, then not only will you teach the truth of God, will you demonstrate the truth of God, but you will embrace all of the teaching of Jesus, especially maybe the most important one, that you would be willing to lay down your life and follow him, even